As far as I can tell, nobody ever decides to have a junk drawer. It just kind of happens. In the house I grew up, it was in the kitchen, a large flat drawer underneath some cabinets. I think it was meant to be an office supplies drawer at first, pens and pencils, but then paper clips, stamps, a couple of nails, a key to who knows what, a spare button to something someone long outgrew, the requisite sandwich bag full of coins, and a little eyeglasses screwdriver. When Molly and I moved into the parsonage, we were determined not to have a junk drawer. So we made a plan for every drawer in our kitchen, meticulously planned out what would go where, no room for extra things to accumulate. But there was this little table in the corner of the dining room with a little drawer in it that we didn't have a plan for, and now it's filling up. A broken watch that someone found at our wedding reception, Tic Tacs, receipts, junk. It has led me to believe that there must be some core human trait, something deep down about us that leads to the junk drawer, the little place where we deposit all of the stuff that we don't quite know what to do with anymore. And I think that not only because in my informal survey of the congregation this week, just about everyone I talked to had something like a junk drawer, but because sometimes when I remember what it was like to stare down into that drawer full of stuff, facing the impossible task of finding what I was looking for, rummaging around for something that I was sure was there, but I just couldn't put my hand on it. Sometimes when I was doing that, I felt like it was even a metaphor for life. Does your life ever feel like that? Like it's, without you even meaning to or thinking about it, it's sort of filled up with this odd assortment of things, like old grudges that you're not sure why you hold on to, or worn out resentments that are long past their usable life. Perhaps a sadness that you can't quite place, or just plain old fear, so dusted over now that you can't even remember what it was you were afraid of to begin with. Is your calendar cluttered? Is your spirit a jumble? It's okay. It happens to everyone. And it's why we have this wonderful tradition called spring cleaning. Did you know, because I just learned, that the practice of spring cleaning actually has religious roots? Some researchers have traced the origins of our modern spring cleaning to the way that the Jewish community prepares for the celebration of Passover, a season when Jews refrain from eating leavened food. So in the days before Passover, observant Jews have for thousands of years thoroughly cleaned their homes to remove every last bit of leavened food, all the way down to a crumb under the cushion or that piece of uncooked pasta that fell behind the stove. In some families I know of, they have a fun tradition. The night before Passover, they shut off all the lights and give the kids flashlights and send them hunting for anything that might have been missed. In the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition, they don't celebrate Ash Wednesday to mark the beginning of Lent. They celebrate a day called Clean Monday. It's a public holiday in Greece and Cyprus where most folks get the day off of work and school to do two things: go to confession and clean their house. It's a beautiful connection to make. Go to confession and clean your house. Because I think it makes clear that this time of Lent, this season of Lent, which is going to begin for us in 3 days on Wednesday, this season of Lent is like a spring cleaning for our souls. It's a time to open up the windows and let some fresh air in, toss out some of the old stuff that isn't working for us anymore, rediscover that hidden gem that you nearly forgot. It's a time to listen deeply, to refine, to cast out what's not working anymore and return once again to the simple truth of God's love. It's a time for spring cleaning. And yes, a time to open the dreaded junk drawer. It's a time to pull that drawer out, as messy as it's become, and take a look. Stare the old grudges in the face, examine the worn-out resentment and the fear. It's time to try, once again, to recommit to a more organized and disciplined approach to our spiritual life, to tend to some of that deferred maintenance in our relationship with God. Now, that's the kind of thing that ministers say all the time, and I know that a lot of my sermons sort of end there, and you rightly ask, how? How? How am I supposed to clean out my spiritual junk drawer? How am I supposed to recommit to a more organized and disciplined approach to spiritual life? How do I do the deferred maintenance in my relationship with God? How? Because if it was really just as simple as me reminding you, we'd all have done it by now. So for this sermon and in this season of Lent, I want to offer you a really practical tool. It's not a magic bullet that will cure all of your spiritual woes once and for all. If I ever found that, I would put myself out of a job. And I don't think it exists. But I have found this particular tool to be uniquely valuable when I need to get a handle on my own spiritual junk drawer. It's an old monastic prayer called the Examen. It was discovered by Jesuits in the 16th century. It's a simple prayer, a practice of sitting still at the end of each day and prayerfully reviewing what has taken place and looking for where God might have been in the midst of it all. It's what we did during the children's sermon in its most simple form. It's kind of like pulling open your day as if it were a drawer and looking down at all the stuff and just starting to dig around and look for God. It's a time to ask questions like, where did I feel close to God today? When did God feel far away? When was I most able to give and to receive love? It's an opportunity to use prayer not just to speak to God, but to listen for how God might be speaking to you through your own experience of everyday life. The Jesuits believed, and I believe with them, that one of the most reliable ways that we hear from God is by paying attention to the way that we experience our everyday lives. They believed that by taking stock of our day and finding those moments in which we consistently felt like we were flying high, we might begin to see a pattern of the life that God hopes for us. And conversely, by seeing the patterns and the trends in those moments that bring us low, we might be able to see something that God is trying to tug us away from. It's a simple set of questions asked each day, but it has an accumulative effect. So if you have ever sat in these pews or anywhere else and heard someone admonish you to listen for the voice of God and wondered how on earth you might do that, try this. Try reviewing your day each day and wondering where God might be in the midst of it. I expect that you will be amazed by the insight that can emerge from simply stopping to listen for a few moments in that structured way. So as I mentioned, Lent starts on Wednesday, our spiritual spring cleaning. And it may be that you have already decided on a Lenten discipline, or you have an old favorite, giving up chocolate, or the classic no meat on Fridays. This year, I want to invite you to do more than give something up. I want to invite you to take something on. I want to invite you to join me in praying the Examen every day of Lent.